Do appreciate you joining us today. Thank you all so much for coming in. If you have any questions as we go through here, feel free to put them in the Q&A. Hey, Breckenridge, that's a great place as well. Obviously love Nashville myself. I used to price over in Breckenridge, and as we go in and I start doing a little showing around in PriceLabs, you'll actually see I have a property that I've built out in Breckenridge. So may end up going in there and using that one for you guys. But thank you all for joining us today. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to end our polls. So appreciate you joining us today for our Unlocking Fall Success, How to Maximize Your Seasonal Performance. This is PriceLabs and Brightside joining together for this presentation. I am Kyle Driscoll. I'm a solutions consultant with PriceLabs. Basically what that means is I'm a super user of the product. I help teach our customers, also do a little bit of revenue management myself, things like that. Prior to joining PriceLabs, we'll slide over a little bit. A little bit more about myself. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I priced for a company that was called Village Realty, that is now called Away Day. Most of my markets were in Colorado, so I did Breckenridge, Steamboat Springs, Colorado, Smoky Mountains, so Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, those areas. Also quite a bit in Florida as well. Before joining PriceLabs, I was pricing about 600 units for that company and kind of going in and helping implement PriceLabs across all of our different shops. One of the PMSs that I was lucky enough to use was Brightside. So I have experience implementing PriceLabs with Brightside. It's a very easy connection, and it's very easy to utilize PriceLabs in conjunction with Brightside. Where I'm mainly working right now, I work with customers mainly in the Southeast and in the central US markets. Usually they have 50 or more properties, but we have an entire team that's here to help you. So let's go ahead and get started. Take a sip of water real quick, folks. So on our agenda today, first things first, we're going to talk about how to prep for the fall season. One of the reasons that I wanted to talk about fall season in this webinar is because over here in the Smoky Mountains in Gatlinburg, I know we have a lot of mutual customers. So does Brightside in this area. The foliage and everything that happens, it's a really big mover, and some people try to maximize their profits during that time. But I've noticed that a lot of people miss out when it comes to that fall and hitting those little booking windows and things like that. So after we talk a little bit about fall, we're going to talk about leveraging dynamic pricing for optimal performance. And I will be sending this recording out eventually. It probably won't come across today. You'll probably get it early in the morning once everything processes and all of that. So after we talk about leveraging dynamic pricing for optimal performance, we're going to look at some key metrics. So some of this stuff is kind of basic, but I will try to take it in a little bit further away from basic than what we've got set up on this presentation. At the same time, I can also make sure that everybody gets this sent out to them once we finish up. All right, so let's get started and preparing for the fall. This is a presentation that was put together by me. So I do want to go ahead and say I did present this based off of Smoky's data. So our customers that are in Florida and Arizona, you can take some of this and utilize it, especially if you hear some of the similar patterns and things like this. But the graphs and the numbers that we're looking at right here are going to be very specific to the Tennessee Smoky region. So right now, the first thing I want to look at is our booking window, which is this graph right here where I've got the little fancy siren or whatever. And this is going to be the total amount of book nights during these windows. So we're going book nights up and booked how far out across. This is over the last 30 days. So what we see right now, you got about 7,000 nights that are booked for one night out, meaning today they're booking for tomorrow. You have about 17,000 nights that have been booked for this week coming up. So think of it as the 2 to 6 day period. But as we get further out, you start looking at 2 weeks out. We go from 17,000 to 28,000, and we go to 27,000 1 to 2 months out. And then if we're looking 2 to 4 months out, we're at 34,000. So what I've done with this is, and this is everything in the Smoky Mountain region. This is everything from a studio to a 20 bedroom property. So there's a lot of nights in there. Just to kind of define how you get 34,000 nights. This isn't looking at one property. This is the whole market. Um, so what I wanted to do is kind of come in here and say, okay, so now we know this information for the booking windows. Now let's look at how far out these are. And that way you can go in, if you're not using PriceLabs, maybe you can take this information and go and manually adjust and try to target some of this information. So 2 weeks out, where we're starting to see that first little increase going up to 28,000, that's going to be on August 20th. So that is really, really soon. You look at 1 month out, so where we're hitting these 27,000 over here, 1 month out is September 6th. That is right after Labor Day. So meaning you should go ahead and take a look at your Labor Day rates unless you have a property that is just head and shoulders above everything else. It's its own beast in its market. I would say go ahead and start preparing your Labor Day. If you haven't, now's the time you've got to get in there and make sure you're competitive with the market. With that said, it doesn't necessarily have to be your rate. So we can look at length of stay as well, which will be this next area we talk about. But I will get to that in a second. The main area that's getting booked out right now is 2 to 4 months out. So if we look 2 to 4 months out, you're looking between October 6th and December 6th. And one thing that's really, really, it really stands out right there is you have the Thanksgiving holidays, which typically books about 75, 80% of the market occupancy in the Smokies. One other thing to keep in mind, and this is very specific to, once again, the Tennessee Smokies region, but this can be applied across pretty much anywhere in the Southeast US, Texas, places like that, anywhere where college sports are really, really, really popular. Those do move heavily. So looking at these right here and seeing that 2 to 4 month window, we're talking about the Smokies. There are, the University of Tennessee's right here. They play the University of Alabama. They play the University of Florida at home. Those both bring lots of people up. Alabama travels tremendously, especially up here into the Smokies. So those are things that you want to be aware of. And having tools like PriceLabs will help you identify that stuff. So one thing, I'm not gonna toot all the Tennessee stuff that I can, but last year Tennessee played Georgia on, I think it was the third, or I'm sorry, the 4th September. So if we were looking only at our historical rates from last year, and I was making rates that way, I would have my rates at the end of September through the roof. But there's no actual game that weekend now. So you want to make sure by using a dynamic pricing system that you're making those changes ahead of time and able to capitalize so that you're not getting your wrong weeks booked out. You're not getting that Alabama week booked out too low because you looked at last year's rates. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to what's happening this year. So with that, talked about, you could go ahead and start bringing your rates down if you needed to. The other step that you really want to look at, in my opinion, before you ever lower rates, is making your property more visible and allowing for shorter length of stay possibilities. Not that you necessarily want to get a 2 night stay in there, but by having your minimum length of stay at 2 night and having your rates correct, you are now more visible than if you have a 3 night or a 4 night minimum length of stay. Meaning if I come in and I look at your property and I start on Airbnb for a Friday and I say I want to look Friday to Sunday, if you have a 3 night minimum length of stay, you don't even exist to me anymore. The quicker you can make that change with your length of stay, the better for you. And I wanted to pull this information in so we could kind of look at it. A lot of folks in the Smokies are going for 3 and 4 nights, which makes a ton of sense. And that is where the nights are getting booked. You've got 69,000 nights that are booked between either 3 or 4 nights. I've also got a decent chunk between 5 and 6. If you're holding on to a minimum length of stay that's a 4 night or a 5 night, I would definitely suggest taking that and at least going down 1 night to give yourself that little bit more visibility. If you are already at that 3 to 4, I don't think it's necessarily going to hurt you to go down to 2 whatsoever. Once again, more visibility, but you want to make sure your rates are right and that you're not too low, so to speak. Now, doesn't look like I have any questions that popped up, so that's good for me right now. Oh, maybe we do have something. Let me get over here, check out the Q&A. All right, Laurie's got 6 properties with us. That's great. Todd, could you comment on 3 night minimums for fall? I didn't take 2 nights through entire pandemic and would discount Thursday, Sunday nights to try to be the winner for 3 nights, opening 2 nights only 2 weeks out. So I think no matter what, when you're looking at fall bookings, you're probably going to achieve those 3 to 4 night bookings. To me, the minimum length of stay is really to help you block your calendar more than anything and to make sure that you fill it up as fully as possible. So if you're going into high season, having a 7 night minimum length of stay that falls to 5, that falls to 4, that falls to 2, that's the perfect way to set it up. When you're entering a lower season or like with fall where your weekends are going to be like 75% to 90% occupied, but your weekdays aren't necessarily going to be that full, I would say go ahead and just have it at 2 and then make sure that your Fridays and Saturdays are where they need to be rate wise. And then hopefully you end up getting that Thursday and Sunday added to it. That would be how I'd respond to that one. Um, Real quick. And if you have any other follow-ups to that, please go ahead and shoot it back in the Q&A, and I'll get to the Q&A at the end of this also. So, kind of what I was talking about with the Tennessee football games and how you need to be aware of when things can move and all of that. What we're looking at right here, and I don't want to confuse you too much, this top line that I'm pointing at right here, that's going to be where last year finished. So this one I'm pointing at right here is essentially October 20th of 2023. We finished at about 75% occupancy. These are the two that we really want to look at, though. So this red line is where the market is at this year as of today. So for August, we're looking at August 11th right here. We're saying that the market is currently 35% occupied. This gray line right here that kind of goes above it, that's really close to the red, that's the same time last year. So what I can look at here is see on August 11th, the market's trailing about 5 to 6%. Nothing crazy. It's ahead right here by about 5 or 6%. It's down right here. This one's going to be that Georgia game I was talking about, so you can see the occupancy is a little lower. This one right here is going to be the Florida game. You can see it's pacing ahead. This one right here is the Alabama game. You can see it's pacing ahead. This big monstrosity right here, though, why would it be so down this week and so high here? And what the reason for that is not because of Bluey that you would think you would see here. Sorry, I had to give a dad joke. This little guy looks like Bluey to me, so had to do it. But this is where Thanksgiving was last year. This is where Thanksgiving is this year on the calendar. So if you are doing rates manually and you're not paying attention to how the calendar moves and things like that, you could have mispriced the wrong, or you could have priced 2 weeks incorrectly and priced one too low and one too high. So that first, that second, or I'm sorry, let me get to it. The third week in Thanksgiving, you may have your rates really, really high and nobody's ever going to book there. And you may already be booked out for that fourth one where Thanksgiving's at. So what I'm indicating here for the Smokies is we do see strong occupancy trends through the fall. You've got growth pretty much everywhere except for this little spot and then the former Thanksgiving. This is incredible to see for the Tennessee Smokies region. Occupancy's gone, or I'm sorry, not occupancy, supply's gone through the roof here. They've added about, I want to say like 4,000 properties over the past year. So to see occupancy higher than what it was last year with supply growing like crazy is fantastic to see. All right, so a little bit more, just kind of want to dive in and show you something that PriceLabs can help you all figure out very, very easily. So once again, looking at the Tennessee Smokies region and kind of breaking things down based on the day of the week. So over the last 30 days, looking at the occupancy and how things have been booking, you can see for Saturdays, roughly about 73% is going to be occupied. So that means across the next 306, or I'm sorry, across the next 30 days, about 72% of Saturdays are booked up, about 71% on Fridays. You can see how this goes, and it makes sense. You expect this kind of stuff, especially in heavy travel markets. So Fridays, Saturdays are going to be, the most occupied. They're also going to be the most valuable for pricing. So that correlates. We're at 71 and 72%. And you can see we're achieving almost $300 ADR and almost $290 ADR. But when we start looking at these extra days, that's when you start figuring out like, hey, maybe there's little tweaks I can do to help me increase revenue. And this is one of the things that PriceLabs does, which is go in and it values your days properly. So on a Friday, we're going from 71% occupancy on Thursday down to 58%. You can see the correlation with our rate. So we're going down about $40 in our rate to achieve this occupancy. Makes total sense. Kind of the same thing. We have to bring our rate down to keep gaining occupancy over here and on Wednesdays. And then the same thing with Tuesdays, you would think you would want to do the same thing. So what we're seeing right here is on Tuesdays, I would say they're still priced too high based off of the internal occupancies. I would be trying to go for 50%, 55%, so to speak. So you could look at these in PriceLabs. This is based off the market. You can see it on your own portfolio as well and start to figure out like, hey, if I just get ahead and maybe, make a tweak for 30 days out and take $10 off my Tuesday rate, maybe I get booked 30 days out for $180 instead of getting booked 7 days out for $120 or something like that. Um, so basically what I'm getting at with this is be able to dive into your individual data, whether it's day of week, individual properties, things like that. You want to be able to have as much insight as possible. And that to me is one of the best things PriceLabs does is give you that insight very, very easy and very easy to understand as well. So with that, that's pretty much everything I've got to cover fall right now. If you have any specific questions about your market, I'm more than happy to kind of try. If I know the market, I'll put my 2 cents to it. If I don't know the market, I'll direct you to support and get that figured out for you. Next up, what we're going to talk about is the three key elements for you to maximize your revenue and your occupancy. The number one, and this is PriceLab's bread and butter, but it's dynamic pricing. And what dynamic pricing is, we've got over here unique daily prices based on hyperlocal trends and rule sets to implement custom strategies. But what dynamic pricing is to me is taking the market data that you have available that's really hard to put together because it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. You know, I got to go to AirDNA. I got to go over here to Key Data. I got to go over here to Airbnb Analytics. I got to do my own internal stuff. With dynamic pricing, you're kind of already getting all of that in one area. So if you join with PriceLabs and you go in and you start looking at the rates and things like that, you're going to see what's happening in the market with your competitors. You're going to see how occupancy's adjusting and how your rates can move to match that as well. There's a lot that goes into dynamic pricing, and I'll cover that a little bit more in depth in just a second. The next really key element, and this I kind of hit on earlier for maximizing revenue and occupancy, is making sure that your length of stay is optimized. Not staying too long or not keeping your length of stay too long and missing out on potential windows to drop that down to bring in a little extra revenue. There's certain things that you can do to, if you change your length of stay to increase your rate slightly for a short period of time and really capitalize on that. PriceLabs has the only industry minimum stay recommendation engine. So what we do is we look at the entire market and we say, hey, these are the rules that we see in your area hyperlocally that work. It may be a 2-night minimum stay during slow period, and it may be a 5-night minimum stay during peak period. If you're in Outer Banks, North Carolina, we're still probably going to suggest that you have a 7-night with a check-in on Friday to Friday or Saturday to Saturday. There's all types of good information in there. The third key element is going to be the insights into your market and the ability to benchmark and look at competitive sets, people you want to strive for, people you don't want to strive for, be able to look in your market and understand what competition is doing. So why dynamic pricing? Number one, I think these aren't necessarily in the correct order. Number one is going to be to make the most money possible, in my opinion. Dynamic pricing works really well when you should be making really high ADR for getting you that high ADR. And when you need to go after occupancy and your rates can't be as high, getting you in that area where you need to be much quicker as well. So to me, that's going to be like the 1A, maximum revenue. One on here is going to be reaction time. So being able to quickly react to demand. Everybody likes to talk about, Taylor Swift. But let's think about something different. I've never really used this example, but let's say you are a fan of the Cleveland Browns. They've been pretty good the past few years or whatever, but you don't really know that they're going to make the playoffs. So let's say they are 8-8. They go in, somehow some crazy stuff happens. They make the playoffs. They're somehow going to end up hosting a home game. There's going to be a lot of people picking off properties in one day. PriceLabs identifies those factors and picks up on not just like the event. We're not saying like, oh, Cleveland Browns made the playoffs, let's go jack up rates. We're looking and saying, hey, the occupancy in this market's gone up dramatically really fast. So let's capitalize on this for our customer. No other pricing software is going to respond as quickly as PriceLabs does. It'll be within 24 hours. You're going to have that updated rate. That's going to be a huge, huge impact for it. Also, on the other side of that demand, let's say last year Taylor Swift came on September 1st. You don't need to have September 1st, 2024 rates the same as last year's. So we want to make sure if the demand is lower than it was last year, that we're also setting your expectations and setting those bars more realistically. Number two is going to be eliminate manual effort. This is kind of embarrassing, but I tell it because, I think everybody can kind of relate to this. When I first started doing revenue management, everything was somewhat manual. You had the ability to upload and download CSVs and stuff like that, basically. Um, but when you do manual stuff, you have a lot of opportunities to make errors, such as a property in Breckenridge, January, like late January 20th, let's say that, instead of putting the price at 500 for a one bedroom, I put it at $5. Needless to say, that got booked instantly, had to go through, cancel all the stuff. It eliminates so much manual effort. Not only the mistakes, but also like you having to go in and say, well, dang, I'm not getting booked up right now. Let me go from 3 nights to 2 nights. Let me go and make that change. Or, wow, my house over here on the river just is not getting any bookings. I got to go in and take the rates down 15%. That's there's a lot of times you could make errors, but there's a lot of just too much time that you got to put into it. Dynamic pricing helps you with taking some of that time back for yourself. That goes to number three, gain back time. So many people in the vacation rental industry and hotels don't have the ability to have a dedicated revenue manager. A lot of you property managers are having to wear 15 hats. I mean, getting called out on 4th of July and having to change, air conditioning units and having to change people's showers and all this other stuff. Time savings is huge when it comes to dynamic pricing. You have a lot of very easy information right in front of you. There are automations in there, and you can make it very automated to match what you want to. It just takes a little bit of time at the beginning to get it there. But I do think gaining back time is going to be another huge addition with dynamic pricing. This is where we get kind of confusing and talk about how everything's generated and all of that good stuff. So basically, the way everything's going to work, you come up with your pricing in PriceLabs. We push all that over to your property management system or directly to Airbnb and Verbo if you don't use a PMS. Obviously we're talking about Brightside here, so this is going to be PriceLabs to Brightside, and then Brightside's going to throw it over to Booking, to Airbnb, to Verbo, to any of the other sites that you may want to have it on as an OTA. We also do directly connect with Airbnb and Verbo. But how the pricing is actually generated is kind of interesting. So the very first step is your input, and we give you tools to help you look at it, but it's basically figuring out your base price by looking at either market and what's going on in the market, or we also have an internal analysis tool that basically, if you've already got rates and you want to try to match it as much as possible with PriceLabs, once you connect, we will go ahead and populate a base price for you and let you decide if you want that. If you do, that's going to be based off of your internal occupancy and your overall rate. So it's going to kind of combine it all and make it into a base price. Once you have that base price, you're going to then have PriceLabs start doing a little bit of the work. The first step of that is going to be the seasonality. So we look in and we say, hey, is this a typical season? So if you know your high season, PriceLabs is going to pick up on that. If we're talking about the Tennessee Smokies, summer is going to be a bigger time. You're going to have a little bit of a bump in fall season. You're going to have a little bit of bump when we get into spring, especially as you get closer to Memorial Day. And then you're going to have some really low rates in like January and February type of a deal. Next up is going to be the day of the week trend. So we look at it and say, okay, well, we know Saturday's book at 75%. We know Wednesday's book at 40%. So Saturday's going to have this much of an increase and Wednesday's going to be down here. Then we look at the events and holidays in the area. So what all is new to it? And this is one of the fun things I want to hop over to our actual tool and show you. So I'm in, you can ignore the occupancy. These are all just kind of dummy listings, but I'm going to pull up the one that I have in, let's look at Breckenridge. So for Breckenridge, let me hit save and refresh. I'm going to come over here and we've got this handy dandy events and holidays area. I'm going to view what events and holidays we're picking up on. So we've got Labor Day. That one's very obvious. We've got Breckenridge Oktoberfest, which the person that's here from Breckenridge, if you're going to be there, I will actually be there as well. So yay. Got Oktoberfest picked up. You've got Halloween, obviously. You got Ullerfest, which is really big in Breckenridge and cool. Obviously, we're picking up on the Christmas holidays and things like that. A lot of the normal holidays that we see. And then let's see here. Hide my screen. If I hop back over here and check out my Knoxville one, Sally is my dog. I named this property Sally's Field. I would like to pat myself on the back for that one. Kind of creative, I suppose. All right, so on here for Knoxville, you can see college football. We know who it is. College football. Got college football again. Then we've got the Windrock Park. I don't know what the FLJM is, but I know Windrock every October has a huge ATV, like I can't even think what it's called, but it's an ATV and like X Games type thing. Does that make sense while it's there? College football. Got Jelly Roll concert. I guess Jelly Roll's moving the needle for us, but Jelly Roll concert, you're picking up on those things. So we're trying to identify that stuff. Once again, we identify it by looking at the demand that has happened in the market rather than actually saying like, oh, it's football season. We're saying, oh, well, that's when the actual football game is. So go up on rates. Next up, you've got lead time. Lead time is looking how far out we are. If you're really, really far out, we may have your rates elevated slightly just to protect it. As you get closer, those rates would come down slightly depending on some of these other factors. If the market's pacing ahead tremendously and you're the only property left, your rates are still going to be pretty high. So lead time will be a part of it. Market pacing, this is my favorite part of our algorithm, and it's the one that makes the most difference. What it is looking at that demand factor and saying, hey, compared to last year, we're not doing so well. The market's not looking so hot. So let's go ahead and get your rate to a more realistic level. Or opposite side, hey, let's react and go really high. That is by far the best element. No other pricing software has the reaction that PriceLabs does. Next up, you're going to be internal occupancy. So if you're pacing behind your normal occupancy numbers, you'll have some rate decreases. Same time, you'll have rate increases if you're performing better than you were last year. Those can all be customized. That's why we have this plus euro customizations. We have a plethora of customizations available for you. Some of them are super specific to certain property managers and things like that. But you can fully customize this and fully automate it if you want to, or you can have it just fully, as is, and you can run it as manual as you want as well. One of the great things about this tool, in my opinion. All right, so now let's take a look at the dynamic length of stay restrictions. And what I want to do is first, I'm going to come in and I'm going to let's talk about this first, and then I'll show you. So why use the dynamic length of stay restrictions? And that's moving it around based off of what's happening in the market, not necessarily staying flat at 7 days until you have to go in and manually change it. Number one is first, you want to target your high value bookings. Make sure that your weekends are capitalized in getting those high rates. Make sure your Christmas holidays, pretty much anything, the graduations around college campuses, Anything that is a high value booking day, we want to make sure that you're getting those a little bit further out, a little bit longer booked as well. That way, one, we can avoid costly mistakes. Two, you already know that you've got it on the books. Three, you can plan everything out, which really gets to our number three, which is the operational preferences. Number two is going to be your elimination of orphan gaps. So let's say you have a 5 night minimum length of stay. Somebody books Monday through Friday, and then somebody else books Monday through Friday again. Now all of a sudden you've got Saturday and Sunday left open with dynamic length of stay restrictions. That would automatically drop to 2 nights, and you would be able to accept a 2 night booking within those five. Once again, you can have as much control in there as you want to. So if you want to accept 1 night bookings, you can. If you don't want to accept 1 night bookings, you can set that as a rule too and just stick with two. Then number three, the dynamic length of stay restrictions. This is really important to property managers, I think, but it's for operational preferences. Some people don't want 1 night length of stays. Some people want to really be able to help their cleaning crews out and things like that. Some people don't want to avoid some people want to avoid parties. If you are in, a heavy metropolitan area like, Nashville or in Indianapolis or in Chicago or in Houston or any of those places, you have to be very wary of being too low on your prices because of trafficking and things like that. So there are ways to go in here and set these and say, hey, I don't want to accept this type of parameter. I only want this type of parameter. And that will help you out a ton as you move forward. So this is kind of a breakdown of it. I don't know that this view makes so much sense to you. So I'm going to try my best to break it down. This is kind of how you would set it up in PriceLabs. So what we're saying is the baseline I'm going to have is I want it to be 2 nights. So it's going to be 2 nights on a weekday, 2 nights on a weekend. Any orphan gap that comes in between 1 and 2 nights, I'm going to fill that. So if it comes down and I just need 1 night available, then it's going to be 1 night. So we're at 2 nights here, 1 night if it's an orphan. And then we look and we see the last minute pricing. So within 29 nights, which is what I'm pointing here. So once we get basically within a month, I now go from 2 nights on the weekday and 2 nights on the weekend to 1 night on the weekday and 2 nights on the weekend. So you can say, I'll take a 1 night on weekdays, won't do it on weekends. And then once you get within a week, so as this person has within 6 nights, they're accepting a 1 night on a weekday or a weekend. Also on this, anything beyond 30 days or beyond 90 days, so anything beyond 3 months, they're deviating from this 2 and they're going up to a 3. So if it's more than 90 nights out, they're 3. Once it gets to 89 nights out, they're at a 2 night up until, so from 29 to 89, they'll be at a 2. This part is going to be extra confusing, so let's just ignore this right now. But what it's telling you is we need to do something different for July because July is your peak season. So what it's suggesting is some much higher far out pricing, or I'm sorry, far out minimum stays. You can see we're offering a 5-day weekday, 6-night weekend if it's more than 3 months out for that, just for the month of July. So you would be able to set up and say, for my entire calendar, I want this rule right here, this whole big thing. And then for July, I'm going to go in and I'm going to say July 1st to July 31st, I want to set this up. So you could have something totally different for that time period. All right. So the third thing that we were going to kind of cover and look at, oh, real quick, let me hop back over. I was going to show you the minimum stay recommendations over here for the Knoxville property I had. So, oh, messed it up. So over here on stay restrictions. So I've got it turned on. I have my little test one built up, but I'm going to hit this setting suggestions available. And I'm going to say I want to go for short term. You can also do midterm if you want to, and we'll give suggestions for that. So what this is now saying for my Knoxville properties, my default's 3 nights. I'm going to fill my orphan gaps. I let it fall to 1 night when I'm 2 nights away. I let it fall to 1 night on weekdays and 2 nights on weekends. If I'm 7 days away, I'm at 2 and 3 within 1 month. Anything more than 90 days out, I'm at a 4 night length of stay. So right now, if I had this and you wanted to book Christmas, it's going to be a 4 night length of stay. If you wanted to book the the end of October, it's going to be a 3 night length of stay. If you wanted to book um, Labor Day weekend, it's most likely going to be a 3 night, and weekday would be two. That may start falling into this or whatever, but I think everybody gets kind of where I'm going with that. So very simple right there. Easy to click on, go to that, and to show you the difference in how things will be suggested differently. I'm going to show you Breckenridge as well. So I'll come in and hit my edit, stay restrictions, and I'm going to do short term here as well. All right, so this one starts kind of similarly. So you can see we have the 3 nights. We also fill orphan gaps. We go 1 and 1 within 6, which is almost the same. We went 1 and 1 within 2 for the Knoxville one, 1 and 2 within 29, which is similar. But then you can see beyond 90, we're going for 5 or 6 nights. And then beyond 180, so more than 6 months out, you have to book 6 nights with me if I accept this. And then we can see that it's suggesting, hey, do stuff a little bit differently. And what this is doing, May is a great example. May in Breckenridge is mud season. There is nothing you can do unless you just are fine with being covered in mud. So you should be at a 2 night minimum length of stay for May, because if somebody's going to come there, you need to be visible for them. All right. So with that, the third thing that we were kind of hitting in here, we've talked about fall, we've talked about our metrics and things like that. Um, right now we want to talk about the market and how do we start observing it. Some of the questions you can ask yourself to see where you fit in with the market. Number one is, how is your pricing and occupancy compared to the market? Sometimes that can be really hard to see. You can go in and, you could always just go in and go to Airbnb and try searching for those. You could use other resources and things like that. Or you could come in and with a tool like PriceLabs. So I'm looking at this Breckenridge property. I'm going to come in here to my neighborhood data area. And what I'm going to look at is my competition. So the first thing that we're really wanting to see is, how is your pricing and occupancy compared to the market? Give us a moment. My apologies for the slowness. All right. So very easily with PriceLabs, you're able to see where your prices are stacking up versus the market. This black line that you're seeing, and it's not fully populated yet, but this black line is where my rate is at. This gray area is the bottom portion of the market and pricing. So the 25th percentile, think of it as the low end of the market. Darker pink is going to be the middle end of the market. Lighter pink is going to be the high end of the market. So I'm able to see where my rates sit at versus the rest of the market. This can all be refined and looked at a little bit more thoroughly as well. So if I want to look at a full year, I can. Um, I like seeing that my pricing up here for President's Day is entering that 99th percentile of the market. That's what I want to see. Kind of the same with occupancy. I can come right in here. This is where the market's occupancy is at. So this red line is in the market every 3, 4, and 5 bedroom. And then I can come in and add last year's data, and I'm going to hide that top line so it's not too confusing. And I can look now and see, how's the market performing. So in Breckenridge, I can see on Friday, August 16th, it's about 20% down almost. That's a big difference. 12% down for that Thursday, 17% down for that Sunday. Basically, what we're seeing is all through September, the market is behind. Without going too into depth and like doing full revenue management on this, the booking window may have changed. There may be a lot going into this, but this is the kind of information that you need to know and have it easily identifiable so you can make changes and get those bookings in there. Got full market history, but this is what I really wanted to show you. So I'm going to hit update data and kind of take a look at our competitor calendar. And voila, this is my favorite part of PriceLabs. So I can see up here my listing. This is my pricing and my minimum length of stay currently. Sorry for scrolling all the way across. And then I've gone through, and prior to this, I went in and I selected these properties because I was like, these are really good comps. And this is what I want to be. I want to be able to observe. So if I'm looking here and I'm saying I'm at $417, I'm at 1 night, where do I win? So I've got this guy, he's competing with me at one night, but he's only at 390. So he's probably beating me a little bit. This one is one night and he's at 359. So if I wanted to, I could look at this and say, well, one night 359, one night 390. I'm at 417. If I take this rate and I go to 300, I guarantee I get booked. That's essentially a way that you could use this and look at it. But PriceLabs is kind of adjusting your rates for you based off of a lot more metrics as well. When's your high season? We talked about that. High season in this one in Breckenridge is obviously going to be anytime where it's snowing. So let's just say Christmas up until it stops snowing in April. Make sure you're able to come in and see that those rates are reflective of that. So you can see I've got a 15% price change on recommended, but look at those rates now. So I'm at $1,800 for this rate as of right now versus, and that's during my peak season versus me being in a lower season, and I'm looking at 500 for um, a weekend price. All right. So which upcoming events can affect your revenue? We talked about that one. PriceLabs shows you those events. You can go right here. We can also add the little character. So if I do that, you can see now I've got these little dots that pop up and it tells me that something's coming there. So if I hover over this, it's indicating it's Labor Day, and that's why bookings are a little bit higher than they were previously. Makes a lot of sense. And then when you go over here, like we were talking about, Oktoberfest is going to be this little area right here. Right. All right, so your occupancy down, is it a market problem or is it you? When we looked at that occupancy chart a little while ago, we saw that it's not you, it's the market. Things have changed a little bit, especially in the September area. So we go back here, we can see that the market is down. That helps you out in conversations with your owners, with anybody that you're really trying to bring into your program or to keep from leaving your program as well, if you have a property management company where you're bringing owners in. And then are your competitors getting more bookings than you? How much are they charging? This goes back into what we were talking about with the compare competitor calendar. So we've got this area, you can look, you can go in and identify your specific competition and say, what are they doing better than I am? Help me kind of look at it. I can look at this and say, I don't have my cleaning fee on here because this is a dummy listing, but let's just say my cleaning fee was $300. That is a huge piece of information to have, because this one, I'm competing with him, but these guys right here at 200, 150, and 200 are kind of kicking me on the cleaning fee side. Another really useful area with PriceLabs, kind of look in and see, what they're charging in those realms too. We covered all of this. I didn't want to spend time on this particular slide because it's a lot. This is the pricing that we looked at, where I was talking about your rates, the black line, and then the market percentiles. And then this is the competitor calendar that we just kind of went over, where you could see cleaning fees, you could see what their rates are and their minimum lengths of stay. This is available for every property that you have, and you can go in and select your competition based off of proximity. They're lined up for you in proximity. You can go through, and as long as you kind of know who you're looking for, you can go in and click them easy. All right, so we've got 15 minutes left, and I've got like 10 seconds worth of metrics to cover. But we will hop in and look at some more on PriceLabs. Let's say maybe by 3:50, we'll hop over and start answering some questions if there are any. So appreciate you all taking the time. And number one metric, average daily rate. I don't want to oversimplify any of this. The metrics that we have on this presentation are simple, but I will go and look at PriceLabs, and we'll talk about some others as well. But if you're unaware, average daily rate is going to be your total revenue for a stay divided by the total nights that you had booked. So let's say in this example, you have a 3-night booking. The total is $1,500 or $1,540. You got $500 for, let's say, Thursday, $500 for Friday, and $540 for Saturday. So for you to find your average daily price, you're going to take that total number, the 1540, divide it by 3. You end up with $513 as your average daily rate. So for that stay, you average $513. There's one good metric for you. If you have any questions about these, please let me know. Occupancy rate, This one's a very, very easy one, and this is one that's really useful for you. But what it is number of nights booked divided by the number of nights available, and then for you to get the proper percentage, you're going to multiply that by 100. So if your property was available for 100 nights, you sold 80 of them, then your occupancy rate's going to be 80%. Same thing if your occupancy or if your property is available for 50 nights, you sell 30 of them, your occupancy rate would be 60%. So we've got that one. We also have a metric I'll cover here in just a second in PriceLabs. It's called adjusted occupancy rate. What that one does is going to be your number of nights booked divided by the number of nights available minus any owner stays or any like maintenance blocks or anything like that that you have. So actual available nights, not just how many nights were on the calendar, so to speak. The third one, and this one's really, really important. This one is RevPAR. You may have heard it as RevPAR or RevPAN, but what it is revenue per available rental or revenue per available room or revenue per available night, however you want to look at it. But what this is your average daily price times your occupancy rate. So let's say your property's booked for 200 days. Your average daily price is $300 and your occupancy rate is 67%. Where's my calculator? I think, I don't know that you'll all be able to see my calculator anyways. But what you get when you take your 300 and multiply it by 67%, you're going to get 201 as your RevPAR. And what that metric is how much money do you make per night, regardless of occupancy? How much do you make per night? To me, this is one of the better ones to look at in hindsight. And it's also really good to make sure that you're kind of following the same trends as you did last year. Ideally, you increase RevPAR, but to increase RevPAR, one of those metrics has to increase or both has to increase. So you would never have a increase of RevPAR if your average daily rate and your occupancy rate were lower than last year. Your RevPAR would be lower than last year. All right, so that is the third metric that we kind of have on this presentation, but I want to hop over and show you some of the other ones that PriceLabs has. So we're going to get back to our main screen. All right, and right here I can add some other metrics and kind of look at them and see what they are. So let's bring that up and see what all we've got. So we talked about total occupancy. Total occupancy is going to be your amount of nights that you have booked versus the total amount of nights that are available. You can look at this metric in the past. So with PriceLabs, you can look as far back as 90 days. You can also look as forward if you want to as almost a year. It's kind of interesting. I've never noticed that was 360 instead of 365, but you can look for 360 days. Adjusted occupancy is going to be the actual amount of nights you have available. So let's say you're looking at July. Total occupancy is going to be how many number of nights booked divided by 31 because there's 31 nights in July. Let's say out of those 31, 10 of them are a maintenance or an owner block. So you only have 21 nights booked. So now you're going to divide by 21 instead of 31 for adjusted occupancy. This will help give you a really good view of what you are actually able to accomplish with the days that you have available. If you have a lot of owner blocks or a lot of maintenance type things or cleaning, or let's say you have to shut down a complex for 3 months so you can fix the roof or something like that, adjusted occupancy can help you out to see how it's performing with what you've got. Total revenue is just the overall revenue, makes a lot of sense. We talked about RevPAR. We talked about ADR as well. Minimum price hitting days. I love this metric on PriceLabs. What it does is we look at your rates and say, hey, over the next 7, next 15, next 21, or next 60, you already have your rates down at the minimum price, which means most likely on Airbnb, they're going to stop prioritizing you because they don't see you bringing it down anymore. You're losing a little bit of the potential to get that last minute booking. This will help you identify that, can help you have tough conversations with owners also that say, hey, the market's changed. I know you want $150 for your minimum, but this tells me I need to go to $130 at least. Give me a little bit more room. That can help you out. We'll skip over this one for right now. It's a little bit more in depth. Last book date is super useful for you in any tool just to be able to easily identify where you've been booked. If you haven't been booked in 2 weeks, you probably need to go and check that property. How many number of nights booked, bookings picked up. Market penetration index is my baby. I love this metric. What it is your occupancy divided by the market's occupancy. So if you are double the market, you're going to have a market penetration index of 2. If you are equal to the market, let's say you're 50%, the market's 50%, you're going to have a 1. If you are less than the market, you're going to be less than a 1. And it's easy to look at it that way and say, all right, if I'm close to a 2 and I don't have a long-term booking in that property, I need to take it back and lower my price a little bit. Again, on those occupancies, the total and the adjusted occupancy, we have those broken down for you if you want to by weekend and weekday. So if you're in an extremely metro area, if you're in Indianapolis, you're in Chicago, you are in Nashville, you are in any of these places that are really, really weekend heavy and event heavy, you can take a look at it just by weekends, have your weekdays, and just I'm not concerned with them because I'm not going to make that much money. If they come, they come. That's great. You can look at them broken down that way as well. All right. So that's kind of a ton of metrics at the end. I feel like I sped through those a little bit. I'm going to get to the questions in just a moment, but I want to hit this up, what we've covered. So number one, the 3 key elements to maximizing revenue and occupancy. Number one is going to be, let's get all the way back here, dynamic pricing, using unique daily prices based on hyperlocal trends, rule sets to implement custom strategies. So if you know you want to achieve something, that needs to be put in there. One thing that I kind of left out in this conversation, the algorithms that you see with any of these pricing softwares that are out there, especially PriceLabs, they're great. And they really, really are trying to put you in the best position possible, but they do not know your business. Any human that knows your properties is smarter than any algorithm, period, because you have to have somebody in there that says, no, man, I can't get $350 for a Tuesday. If I do, they're going to be mad at me. Like, yeah, your algorithm may say that, but I don't want to deal with that. There's so much more knowledge that you have that when you take that knowledge and apply it to these algos, you can make a huge impact. Number 2 on the key elements, the length of stay optimization, which we covered. Number 3 is going to be market analysis. Back over here. All right. So dynamic pricing that adapts to your markets. Number 3, setting up minimum length of stay. I guess I should have kind of looked at this. It was already covered on there. Number 4, learning your market and competition. And then number 5, some of those key metrics. All right. And here's the selling, I guess. So PriceLabs makes your job easier by giving you access to market data, hyperlocal recommendations, and automation settings. With that said, also, you've got one of the most fantastic support teams. I would like to say I love PriceLabs as a software. It made me really good at my job as a revenue manager. It made my life easy. It made my job easier. It really, really helped. But one of the things that I love so much about it and why it was so impactful to me was I always had support. I've never interacted with a vendor where you reach out and you're getting responses like instantly almost. We have 24/7 support, have a full team of product specialists that really understand our product. We don't hire anybody that's just like a customer service rep that responds to people. They actually have to learn our product and know how to respond to it. Um, so yeah, we did have one user early on when we did the poll that was already with us. So my apologies on the lack of the 15%. But if you want to reach out to our support, tell them you're already a customer, tell them you attended, ask them if they'll give you 15% off 3 months. I'm sure they'll take care of it for you. But please, if you'd like to sign up with PriceLabs, check it out with this Brightside PL 2024 code. All you'll need to do is, well, let me get back over here. I'm going to sign out of here and show you where you'd go for PriceLabs. All right, so all you would do is come in here, hit start your free trial, enter your name and all that, and then your referral code would go right there. So you would need to put in Brightside PL24 right there. Right. So now we have a little bit of time, about 4 minutes before 4 o'clock. I can stick on a little bit longer if we don't cover everything. But if you have any further questions that I can't get to before we wrap up, we will email out the responses. We will email a copy of this. But if you have any further questions, please reach out to support@pricelabs.co. They'll get back to you and help you out as quickly as possible. So real quick, I'm gonna start in the chat and go down through here and see if there's anything I can help with. Let's see, Todd, I manage somewhere. Like Brightside, I looked in the others. Support is great. I agree. Brightside has great support. Emmett's a fantastic representative for sure. Da, da, da. Let's come again. Go back to the promo code. Yes, we'll go back to the promo code. Da, da. Why can't I get back? Restart. Sorry about that. 1 second, get to the promo code. All right, here you are. So yeah, all you'll need to do is pricelabs.co. You can type in pricelabs.com. It's going to go to us. Or you could do hello.pricelabs.co. All you'll need to do is hit up top in the, well, stop going backwards. There we go. So you hit the sign up button. So we go, Kyle. Kyle. I'm not going to tell you all my password. I'm going to say I've got 25 properties and RR, and then I would put in Brightside PL24 right there. That's how you would set up that. And you all are very welcome. How often do we check and update base price? That's a really good question. I would suggest checking it every 2 weeks. PriceLabs automatically goes in and kind of measures how you're performing with that base price. So if we look at it and say, hey, you would benefit from going from 230 to 225, we'll give you that recommendation once every 2 weeks. It's just a matter of if you want to go in and accept that or not. Oh, you're very, very welcome. And let me see if I can get back up here. All right, let's look at the Q&A. All right. Kyle, you mentioned Outer Banks. Here on Western Michigan coast, they have extreme seasonality, 7 weeks, late June into August. Always done 7-night stays for 12 years to ensure same flip day, no orphan nights. But a must set changeover day to Sunday only. So anyone looking Saturday to Saturday misses me. What does your gut tell you about that? I work with some customers that are up in the lake areas in Michigan. I think it's really hard without looking at the individual property, Todd. Um, I would love to be able to give you a little advice. My initial reaction is if you can be the one to differentiate yourself from the rest of the market and get away from those check-in days, you can make some incredible additional income. And one of the reasons is because there are people that would be willing to pay the same amount for that 7 night as long if they could leave five, or come in for just 5 nights type of a deal. So let's see. Anonymous, will the screen be larger on the recording or will it still be this size? My apologies, I did not realize the screen was looking very small on there. So I don't know 100% how to answer that for you. And Miss Alicia says, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, folks, we're going to give it just another minute or two. That way, if you have any follow-up questions or anything you want to hit, you've got a little extra time. But if not, I do greatly appreciate you. Thank you on behalf of PriceLabs and Brightside. It's wonderful sitting here and chatting with you. If you're a current Brightside customer, please feel free to reach out to Emmett and ask any questions that you've got of them. It's a great tool. You've got great support with them. And if you have any questions for PriceLabs, you can reach out to us at support@pricelabs.co. Reach out to me, kyle.driscoll@pricelabs.co. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. And if you're ever at one of these conferences or anything, look out for me and my teammates. We love to chit chat with you, love to help you out with your revenue management. I'm a geek when it comes to that kind of stuff. So if you want to chat revenue management, reach out to me. Well, folks, I don't see any other questions coming in. Let's see, Dinesh, is there a way to realize where I want 6-night minimum stay, but if booked on weekends like Friday, it's okay to have 2 nights? There is, Dinesh. So there is a way for you to kind of figure that out. If you don't mind, reach out to support@pricelabs.co with your account number. So that way they could look at it if you do have an account. If not, whenever you go in and start your free trial, reach out to us. There's going to be an onboarding link whenever you come in to kind of have a chat with somebody. Go ahead and do that and somebody will be able to help you out with it. Folks, thank you all so much for joining today. I hope you all have a blessed day. My apologies for not covering more than just the Tennessee area, but thank you all so much and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.